Good Thursday morning. How are you all? Ginger Z here, coming to you from my home studio. Well, I'm just in the basement, not in the studio, but a very special topic to talk about today, going back to school and the mental health of our children and of ourselves. And so we are fortunate enough to be joined by the Child Mind Institute, Dr. Harold Koplewicz, and he is going to jump in here. And I'm going to be asking him some questions because I know the last couple of months, I'm sure they have seen at the Child Mind Institute, which is one of just the best, by the way, doing amazing research and amazing work with children, such, beautiful work they've done. Sorry, my dog is crying. But I'm going to, when Harold gets in here, Dr. Koplewicz, when you get in here, just a lot of things happen in here. Okay, so once he gets in, hi to you, Matthew, by the way. The comment is not pasting, so sorry, Tony, that's not going to happen this time for some reason. If you guys have questions and you are a teacher, I just saw Barb, you're a teacher. If you're a parent, if you are a student and you've got some concerns, please use that question mark on the bottom left and we will have a chance to ask Dr. Koplewicz any of your questions when it's in regards to going back to school and the mental health of children. So I'm trying to put that in here, and it's for some reason just not loving taking it. But if the Child Mind Institute gets in, go ahead and just comment so that I can request you. And that way we can get started here. There are a lot of questions, and I know there's a lot of concerns. I have concerns. I was writing my kids' schools this morning because my kids are young, but they go to a Montessori or nursery school, and they sent out a bunch of notes about how they can't have reusable water bottles and can't have reusable lunch boxes. But then my understanding didn't say anything about masks, and I was like, aren't masks necessary? And keeping a mask on a 4 and a 2-year-old is going to be tough enough. So that, tough enough with all of the other concerns, but apparently they are going to be wearing masks. Okay, look it says Child Mind Institute is here, and I will go live. Right, so you should be joining in. And this is the nice part is we've got experts that know this. Hi, how are
Hi,
you?
good morning, Jinder. How are
Dr.
you?
Koplewicz, it's great to see you.
Yeah, it's a long time, but you look good.
Yes, I know. I feel like it was yesterday, but of course time flies. I was able to go to your facility in New York and see some of the research that you're doing. And obviously I've had a long history with mental health and mental illness, both in my family and myself. And so it was so meaningful to know that a group like you not only exists, but especially the last couple of months, even more necessary.
It's kind of frightening, to tell you the truth, that every child's mental health has been affected by COVID-19. So while it's only 1 out of 5 children in the United States who have a real mental health disorder, even the 60% of the population that's happy-go-lucky, that's typically developing, the strain and stress of not having school or being worried about your family's finances or grandma, grandpa's health, or wearing a mask is stressing them and causing them to be symptomatic. And then there's 15% of the population that is actually subclinical. They're a little quirkier, they're a little more moody, they might be a little more inattentive, but they never go to a doctor because they still function really well.
Right.
This stresses them. And then on a good day in America, only 40% of that 20% who have a mental health disorder get help. So those 60% of those kids, they're really suffering. If you have obsessive compulsive disorder, if you're anxious during a good day, you can imagine how troubled you could be right now. And then last, there's 5% of the population have very serious psychiatric illness, schizophrenia or very low functioning autism. And typically a global pandemic wouldn't affect them, these kind of historic events, because they're either not psychologically or emotionally or cognitively able to connect. But
Right.
This pandemic is so bad, it's affecting the supply chain. So their social groups, their day hospital, even the medications that they need are very often not at the pharmacy. So this is affecting literally everybody's mental health.
Right. And that's the thing is we've seen it, we've kind of addressed it in ourselves perhaps, but going back to school, this is when it all comes to fruition. It's like, okay, we're going back to what was normal, but it's not going to be at all normal. And on top of not being normal, I think about this a lot when my neighbor was telling me their kids are doing the every other day thing. I thought, I did that with my parents because my parents were divorced and we had a really strange custody agreement. And I point a lot of my control issues to not having control. So I
Right.
assume that this is going to evoke those OCDs and anorexia and a lot of the childhood things that come from a lack of control by having a pandemic.
So I think there's some givens. I think parents have to recognize this is going to be an abnormal year. I would tell you that in many ways, the academics of this year are going to have a different standard because whether you're going in person, it most probably will be in pods. It'll mostly be shorter days. If you're doing distance learning or homeschooling, it's going to have to be less intense. And you're going to lose out on a lot of the socialization, a lot of extracurricular activities. So if we go into this limiting and changing our expectations, that makes things a lot better. Number two is we have to be flexible because even if you're going to start in person and you feel comfortable that your school has this under control and that you as a family think that this will work, you have to recognize that if there's an outbreak, if a bunch of kids in the pod get sick, or if the teacher gets sick, you're going to have to reevaluate how you're going to do this. And there's two things that are going on. There's uncertainty, and that requires flexibility. And I can tell you that every child wants certainty. They want to know what time they go to sleep.
Yes.
They want to know what day is school. And so I think this is it's going to put a lot more strain on every parent out there. So for parents who work, as well as being a full-time parent, they now have a new job that they got less during the springtime. They're a teacher's aide, they're a tutor, and in many times they're their kid's friend, all of a sudden their playmate. And if you accept that and try to work around it, it's going to be a lot better. If you're constantly overwhelmed by these tasks, your kid is going to feel it also, because this kind of anxiety is very contagious.
And that's the thing. So I guess your suggestion is, as we go into the school year, no matter what it looks like, because it is different from district to district, let alone state to state, is to just, I assume, communicate, say,
Right.
This is going to be different, right?
Right.
And then going into it though, and then not to project your own anxiety, because I think that was the immediate response when everything happened so fast. Everyone's like, I can't be a teacher. It was. I even said audibly multiple times that his half hour of school with a bunch of 4-year-olds and trying to help him make sure he had the right stuff, that was the most stressful part of my day.
I mean, there's a few silver linings to COVID. One is that I think we have a greater appreciation of how valuable and how hard the teachers work in the United States. That they're in my opinion, they're underappreciated and underpaid because what they do is so important. The second, I think, silver lining is telehealth. The fact that on March 15th, the Child Mind Institute closed their doors, the physical doors, temporarily in both California and in New York. And within 48 hours, 98% of our patients started seeing us remotely. And while it took a while for new patients to start their treatment on a screen, actually today we'll see 280 kids, nearly 300 kids online getting help, and another 10 will come to the offices in New York and another 8 in California in person. So that tells you that not everyone is ready to go back to the normal, even with masks and temperature checks, to see their doctor. But we're seeing kids from all over, literally from all over the country, and sometimes from other countries, because of telehealth. And so parents shouldn't hesitate. We usually wait 2 years from the onset of symptoms till the time we go get help for our kids when they have a mental health disorder. This is a moment where we shouldn't do that, because we should recognize that this is a big stressor. If you're feeling irritable, if you're feeling uptight, you can only imagine what your kid is experiencing.
One of my favorite parts of this has been my ability to stick with my telehealth, mental health checkups, and having my, because I'm not traveling, because my schedule's a bit more set in stone, I'm able to use it as like my personal trainer for my mind. If someone wants to get involved with the Child Mind Institute, what's the best way for them to do it? If they say, you know what, I do have some questions, where should they go? What should they do?
Well, they should definitely go to childmind.org. And any parent should go there, because we have very robust resources for parenting during COVID-19. And twice a week, we have a Facebook Live on our Facebook page on parenting with specific skills and specific topics. And once a week, it's in Spanish. So I think that's really important that parents should do that. Secondly, if you think that your kid needs more and needs some kind of consultation, don't hesitate. On our website, childmind.org. It's an easy way to get in touch with us. And very quickly, we can have someone on the phone going over the history, understanding the story, and deciding whether or not we need or you need to see someone and that your child needs to be evaluated. Communication is really going to be the important part of getting information from a parent and deciding if this is just demoralization because things are tough now, or maybe it's a real anxiety disorder, or maybe even depression. The best news is these disorders are real, they're very common, but most importantly, they're treatable. You know that the average child who comes to the Child Mind Institute sees a doctor 16 times during the entire year. So that means some kids are coming less, some kids are coming more, but this is about figuring out what the diagnosis is, getting those symptoms under control, and getting your kid literally away from us as fast as possible. Very often we'll have parents saying, don't you like my child? I say, I love your child, but I'd rather he play baseball. Or today I would rather he hang out with his parents in the backyard than spend time with us if it's not necessary.
So childmind.org is the important one. And I think I was thinking a lot about this because my kids are nowhere close to knowing disappointment necessarily, but I've been seeing a lot of the seniors this year. I have a 17-year-old sister who will be a senior this year. And that is one thing where a milestone would mean a lot. A prom, a graduation. We already saw the last class stressed and changed by that. What do you suggest to parents about, those, especially the older teens, where this is already kind of a strange time in their life where they're about to make, am I going to a trade school? What am I doing with my life? But also, I'm not going to have a prom.
But I think we should think about children as anywhere from 0 to 22. And so if you are 0 to 5, you're talking about your 4-year-old, this is actually not a bad time. Mom is not traveling. I got mom all the time. I get to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner with her. Mom is my playmate. I didn't know she could be this much fun. And dad's around, or both moms are around. It's really not bad for 0 to 5. From 5 to 12, this learning is not easy. So going to school is fun. There's extracurricular activities. There's a playground, and you're learning the alphabet. You're learning how to read. Well, all of a sudden you're doing it on screens. And as much as I like seeing you, Ginger, on the screen, it's so much more fun in person. Do you mean? Yeah. It is a much more meaningful 5, 10, 20 minutes with you when we're having a cup of coffee and we can see the nuances of our expressions on our face and we can see our body language. So for a lot of those 5 to 12-year-olds, not having a teacher tap them on the shoulder or recognize they need a little extra help, this is more of a challenge. They're also a challenge because they like to socialize. And so if you can't figure out, if you don't have siblings or if you don't have neighbors that are, kind of sheltered in place with you and following the same rules and regulations as your family, you're going to have to figure out how to Zoom or how to find a substitute for that kind of socialization. And you're almost going to, as much as I hate screens, you're going to start using screens in a different way than you did before. But I think the kids who are taking the biggest hit are the kids who are 13 to 22. You're never getting back your junior prom. You are not getting back that first kind of casual hookup of, some secret kissing or some flirting. That's not happening. And if you're in college and you're sitting in a lecture hall and you have the most boring professor ever, and you lean over to the guy or girl next to you and say, do you understand a word this guy is saying? I mean, he could be a hypnotist, and if someone laughs and you just have a cup of coffee, you just become friends. That has disappeared also. Right. So I think it's really important for parents to tell their kids who are a teenager or who are a young adult, this is really worse for you than it is for me. You are losing out on things that we could try to make it better. We could have, a make-believe prom in the backyard with social distancing. But it's absurd. They're not getting dressed up in tuxedos. They've just lost that. Now, it's not the end of the world if you don't have a prom, but it is a loss. And I think that if we don't tell kids that we recognize it and validate their feelings, it's really a problem. I always talk about the fact that my parents were Holocaust survivors. And for them, my mother once said to me, when I was really upset about school or something, and said to her, I had a very bad day at school. She said to me, well, the Holocaust is over. Your father's on the concentration camp. You have food. And I remember I was in 9th grade or 10th grade, said, Mom, I'm really glad the Holocaust is over, but it doesn't take away from the fact that I had a miserable day at school.
Right.
And so there's a global pandemic. It's awful. Maybe I've lost my job, or maybe your grandmother's very ill. But if you're having a tough time and you missed senior prom, or you missed out on being with your friends, that's real too. And I think the telltale sign is that, Ginger, a year from now, when things are back to normal, once we have a vaccine and massive vaccinations and we've come to a new normal, you and I will be able to say, boy, that was a tough time we went through. But it's the same way that we'll discuss that it was a tough time, a 9/11, or it was a tough time, some other horrible event. For the high school student, they're not getting back, that they took a big loss, or the college student who lost a whole semester or a whole year, or couldn't start his job. So it's important for us to validate for your 17-year-old sister, this is worse for you than me. Now, how can we help? What's the thing that we can make this better?
And that's the thing with, you know, even when I talk to her, she doesn't mind not going to school. So I think they're going to have a virtual option, and she's always been a bit more okay with that. But
Right.
there is concern about, like you said, it's not just about screen time, it's about what that ends up meaning for a human being's development. Because I know identity for children is developed by 7 or so, and based a lot on the people around them telling them what their identity is. But then that development of your identity, having a year off or having a year and a half off, that has to have impact. So what,
Right.
even if your child isn't saying something's wrong, I don't feel well, what are some of the things parents should do for those teens, aside from addressing, yes, this is difficult?
So let's remember that psychiatric illness really has its onset, 50% of it before the age of 14 and 75% of it before the age of 24. So that's without a pandemic. And the telltale signs are always D&D, distress and dysfunction. You know, how unhappy is your child? Do you start seeing that your child doesn't want to eat, or is not getting any pleasure out of Fortnite, or doesn't want to throw the ball with you in the backyard, and won't play Monopoly when the family does corny
Right.
things and says, let's have a family night? And the second part is dysfunction. Can they not pay attention to the screen? Can they are really not able to get dressed in the morning. They don't want to brush their teeth. There's a change in their sleep hygiene. They really seem to be not themselves. And it has to last for 2 weeks. And it has to be most days of those 2 weeks. And then that's a red flag. That's the moment that you should say, I'm going to reach out. I'm not going to bother my pediatrician. I will go and check out more information on childmind.org. I will contact the psychologist or psychiatrist that we've used before, because I don't want this to get worse. Because 2 weeks is a long time. And think about it, Ginger, if you and I developed a rash while we're talking to each other, we could contain not scratching it. But as soon as the Instagram is over, we're going to go to the bathroom, try to find some cortisone and put it on, right? And more importantly, if 2 days, 4 days, 2 weeks later, you are not getting relief, even during COVID, you are clearly going to go to a dermatologist online or in person to take care of it. And typically we wait 2 years to get help. So treat your kid's mental health as well as you would treat his skin or her skin. So I think that's, know your kid, watch sleep, appetite, concentration, joy, pleasure. Now, I think parents also have to create a whole new environment that's hard. They have to structure the day. They have to say, we're all waking up at 7 o'clock. We're all going to brush our teeth. We're taking a shower. We're getting out of our pajamas. I mean, you look dressed. I'm wearing pants. I'm wearing different clothes now that I sleep in. And I shaved, and I have a day that's scheduled in front of me. And for kids, they sometimes need their parents to do that. And for a 4-year-old, I would even say, we're going to bake a cake, or Wednesday is pizza night. We're going to make pizza, or we're going to go out with masks, get the pizza, and bring it home, so that they have something to look forward to. The other part is that while I said I think it's a lost year academically and a very challenging year, I wouldn't share that with our children. I would do this in bite-sized pieces. I would say, okay, let's get through this week. And the important part of getting through the week, even with 4-year-olds at home, is expressing gratitude. So I think it's really important for dinner on Friday or dinner on Sunday, pick a time where things are a little lighter and say, why am I happy? What's the best thing that happened to me today? Or what's the best thing that happened to me this week? And you model that. And you have to, because we should be very grateful. We have a roof over our heads.
Yep.
There's plenty of food. We're able to go out for a walk, or we're able to have each other, and we can FaceTime with grandma or with some of our best friends. There are many people out there that this pandemic is devastating. The fact that they're going to lose their homes, the economic challenges, the fact that their schools are not able to do synchronized learning and really engage them. I worry terribly about those high school students who were barely holding on academically, that were just managing to get to enough classes. Will they let go? And once you drop out, how terrible for them. So I think it's really important for all of us to try to find the positive on almost a daily basis and express it, model it for our kids. Even though if you're a teenager, they're going to roll their eyes. I mean, you say, oh, here we go again, Dad. Why am I lucky? I'm lucky that you only make me do this once a day. You know, it's okay. But I think it's really important to do that, because otherwise you're literally in the middle of a pandemic that is absolutely awful, and you could just do woe is me. And if you get into that mindset of the future, what are we going to do? How horrible this is. It's really you go into a tailspin that's really quite awful.
Well, that's, I'm glad to hear that, because we do every night before bed, we do what are you grateful for? And even the 2-year-old's starting to chime in, but Adrian, the 4-year-old, is really into it. And he's even starting to search for things, because he realizes, he says the basics every day, but then he's like, I'm going to think about a new one. And there's no way that doesn't help. And we also focus on through the day, telling him about the great things that, even the accomplishments. And that's something that I've tried to do even for myself, because without the big accomplishments of traveling to Africa and telling a story and doing all these things, I have to find beauty in the smaller ones. I like where you said this. I think it's hard enough, like on a regular basis, to meal prep, but to set out an organized and, timeline for yourself and your children is difficult, but I think so necessary. The other big part is physical activity. I mean,
so we're thinking the same. So
yeah.
I'm going to say your kid needs physical activity every single day. In fact, we're now going to start working with the Department of Education of New York City with an actual helpline for all school personnel if they're running into difficulties with kids who might have a mental health symptom. But we are doing packages for schools across America saying that every day maybe should start a class, if you're doing it online, with 10 jumping jacks. Why are we saying that? We want some cardiovascular activity. If everybody watching our Instagram would do 20 minutes of cardio every single day, no matter how old you are, go for a fast walk. Think of it as like flushing all new blood into your brain. You're cleaning out your brain with new blood. It's great for your brain, for depression, anxiety, and even for dementia. So if you want to have brain health, 20 minutes of physical exercise is really important. So if you're going to start a day with a kid, wouldn't it make sense? How hard? 10 jumping jacks is not that difficult. You won't lose control of them. The other piece is mindfulness. Helping your child to settle their mind and just sit with their thoughts for 1 minute, just for 1 minute. And when thoughts come into your head, you learn that you can just leave them alone. You don't have to do anything with them. It's not transcendental meditation. It's 1 minute of mindfulness. Everyone can do that. Feel your breathing, feel your heart beating. Maybe you hear the noises of your apartment or your house, or you can actually hear birds outside. But just stay still for 60 seconds and be in the moment. Because being in the moment is really, it's not anxiety provoking. Being in the moment of, oh my God, what are we going to do the rest of the day? How am I going to pay the bills? And and I have 10 more things to do. And is this pandemic ever going to end? I mean, it's like, and also, even though you're on television, I can't recommend enough. Only watch 30 minutes of news a day. And don't watch it all at the same time, because unfortunately cable news repeats itself again and again. And no matter what bubble you're in, whether you're in a conservative bubble, a liberal bubble, a center left, if you watch that channel too many, it just repeats itself, and it will become anxiety provoking. So if you watch for 10 minutes and then you do another 10 minutes later, and another 10 minutes afterwards, that's it. And then you force yourself to turn it. It's like bad candy or bad carbs. Turn it off because it's not doing anything positive for you. And that, by the way, that 10 minutes is not a bad way to think about talking to your kids. Having conversations or having activities in bite-sized pieces. You know, by the way, we're not having school next week. We're going to do school at home, and we're going to do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. This is the exciting things we have to look forward to. And well, what about next week? We'll take this 1 week at a time. Or we do have school. We're going to school. How exciting. And I don't know if you remember this, but I remember summer being so long when I was a kid, and now they shrunk it. And so, you know, it's like, oh my God, I have to go back to school again. Well, this year it's kind of weird because, you know, especially if you're not going to go to a building, it's very hard because I'm kind of at home, I'm on vacation, I'm not on vacation, I'm working. So you have to provide that structure for your kids. It's essential. Otherwise, they're going to run around in their pajamas all day. You know, they're not going to feel like they're accomplishing anything.
This is, in case everyone's just joining us, I wasn't able to put it in the comments for some reason, but this is Dr. Harold Koplewicz, and you can find him and all of this information at childmind.org, Child Mind Institute. You can follow here on Instagram. We have 5 more minutes with you, and I just want to make sure we answer people's questions.
Sure.
There's a great function here on Instagram Live, and if you all are watching and you have a question about your child specifically and their mental health, go ahead and put the question in that question mark, and that way I can show it off to everybody else so we can all learn. And we will definitely save this. People are asking, are we going to save this? And yes, the answer is yes. It will be on Good Morning America's feed. I think, you know, while we're waiting for people to populate those questions, you have been doing this, and Child Mind Institute has worked on a myriad of things. This has to be the biggest in your history of kind of that widespread feeling. In the last couple of months, what's been the #1 call you've taken?
I'm sorry, I missed that question.
What, in the last couple of months since the pandemic started, what has been the #1 question from parent, or the #1 call to the Child Mind Institute?
So I would tell you it's about anxiety symptoms. My child's behavior has changed. They're being more rambunctious or more oppositional, more defiant. They just seem very grumpy. What should we do about that? And so I think the thing that we have to remember is that, for instance, if you're inattentive, you don't necessarily have ADHD. You might be rambunctious and impulsive. You don't have a behavioral problem. These are just symptoms. And so very often the symptoms are related to worry. And in the fact that we are helping parents have a discussion with their children about COVID-19 in developmentally appropriate language. It's a very catchy cold out there, a virus. And the reason why we're washing our hands so often is we don't want to give it to somebody else. The reason why we wear a mask is to protect other people. The reason why they wear a mask is to protect others. And when you get older, it's much worse, this virus. So we're protecting grandma and grandpa. That kind of language that makes sense to a child. And then the other thing we tell parents all the time is don't be afraid to say to your children, you know, ask me questions later if you have more questions. Keep this dialogue open, because, you know, if you think about Grimm's fairy tales, the stories children tell are horrible stories.
Yeah.
Eating them, you know, putting them in ovens, you know, tigers, lions, and bears. And the truth is always much better than what's in a child's mind. So if you do that, that's really very helpful for your children. And that's the, you know, parents saying, what do I say to my children? And what do I do about these symptoms?
Now, Mrs. Bruce here is saying, what are some techniques for handling separation anxiety with my 5-year-old going to kindergarten?
Okay, so think about this. If you have separation anxiety disorder, and you have the real disorder, not just separation anxiety, you worry about a threat to the integrity of your family, you worry about homesickness, you get physical symptoms upon separation, and now you've been staying at home all the time. Mom and dad are right with you. You're even getting into their bed. So there's hardly any separation. And now I'm telling you, guess what? School's back and you're going out. So we're going to see a lot of kids who are going to have more anxiety now when they have to separate. Socially anxious kids, people who are pathologically self-conscious, they're going to have more symptoms. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to help these kids very easily, but it's important with them. We're going to take it in bite-sized pieces. We're going to tell them about all the good things that are going to happen at school. We're going to also tell them that we're going to wait outside for a while until they're settled. And you're going to give them an idea of when you're picking them up. So you show them on a clock, or you show them on their phone if they have one, what time you'll be there. And you can also sometimes give them a transitional object, meaning you can take their teddy bear. They can take a favorite toy with them. And most often, this is transient. Most often within 2 weeks, it disappears. It just might be a little more now because we're in an anxious state of mind, but it will pass. Only a small percentage of kids really have difficulty with separating school. School's a fun place. I mean, you remember, we always say at the Trauma Institute, why do we work with schools? It's like Willie Sutton. He robbed banks because that's where the money is. We work with schools because that's where kids work. That's where kids have fun. That's where kids learn how to be friends with other kids. So believe me, I would love to see every school in America open. I just think we should be very careful about this, that parents are comfortable and schools are comfortable, that it's safe. Because I think the worst thing that would happen is your kid would get sick, or get one of you sick, or get one of your family members sick. And that would make the kid feel bad because they feel guilty about it. And then also it'll build an endless anxiety about how safe the world is.
Right. I think these were all incredibly helpful tips. Thank you so much, Dr.
It's good
Koplewicz.
to be with you.
It's great to be with you too, and I'm going to take those. I know for a fact my 2-year-old has never been to a school yet, so me being around and my husband being around this last 6 months is going to be. It's different in general, but he's going to have a rough transition.
It's also a test. But I have to tell you, being around with each other so often is a test on how good or how troubling a relationship is. So,
and we've been really lucky. I feel that's something I feel grateful for. I've said that in our gratitude things. It's like, I can't believe how well this has gone, and I'm so grateful to be here. But I've actually, on the other end, now I'm going over the time for a second, I've actually started to feel something I've never felt in my life because I'm a depressive person. I have felt anxiety because I've never been a person who worries extensively. But since I've been home a lot, I'm the one home. Usually I'm jumping off of a mountain somewhere. But when the boys went with Ben the other day, I had a breakdown because I had these awful thoughts of them getting in an accident, me losing them, and so I know that this has changed my mind, and I'm so glad that you all at the Child Mind Institute, and childmind.org is where you go, are bringing to light what it can mean to children, because it can be even harder for them. So thank you so much for all you're doing.
Stay well and stay very safe, Ginger. Okay?
Thank you so much. You too. Bye. Bye.